Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, where our mission is to join together to create a nourishing, liberal religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in our wider world. Or in short, to create community, find meaning, and work for justice. Thank you. Great to have all of you here today. I want to begin by embracing all that you bring with you, all of your unique beliefs, your background, your lifestyle, your experiences, all those things we mention each Sunday. And it's especially important that we mention this today as we celebrate our Partner Church Sunday, our partnership with our Unitarian Church in Felș-Rockos, Romania. Especially this year, which is the 450th anniversary of the Edict of Torda, which was the first religious freedom law in human history. Because it was written to enable a community with a lot of diversity to live together as friends. And so when we say this each Sunday, and we welcome you with embracing all that you bring with you to this space. This is a tradition that goes back to the very origins of our faith. So even though I say it, it's never really ritualistic. It's very meaningful. We're going to be talking more about the Edict of Torda in a little bit, but I did want to welcome everyone who's here today with these words that are so important to us. And this includes those of you who hear us say it each Sunday, but also those who might be hearing it for the first time this morning. You're equally as embraced for all that you bring with you. And of course, it includes those who are streaming with us. We're glad to know that you're with us as well. And I suspect that our dear friends in Felș-Rockos, in the village, are watching too, because the new minister there, Reverend Palco, tells me that they like to tune in now and then. So I'm sure they will on this special day. So hello, my friends. On behalf of everyone here at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Spokane, we love you. Before we greet one another, I have just a few announcements I want to let you know about. One, of course, this is not an announcement, but you've probably noticed that our unity candle has been lighted here at the front of the church, which we do whenever we've had a member that has passed away during the week. And last week, one of our members, Kathy Seeley, died after a brief illness and then being under hospice care for a bit. Kathy and her husband, Richard, have been members here in the past and only recently started attending again. So we're doubly grieved by her loss. Please keep Richard and their entire family in your thoughts. There is a memorial service scheduled for next Saturday at 11 a.m., which will actually be at the Ball and Dodd Funeral Home. Karen Dorn-Steele was here during our first service, one of our church members. You may have saw in the paper that she was honored on Friday night as one of the watershed heroes for her work as a investigative journalist with the Spokesman Review, uncovering lots of environmental issues, including what happened at the Hanford Nuclear Reservation. And the watershed hero is a designation that's been actually given to a few of our church members over the years, but it's given by the Sierra Club's Upper Columbia River Group, as well as the Center for Environmental Law and Policy. So when you see Karen, please thank her and congratulate her for the recognition. Also wanted to ask you to consider, if you're free, going to the City Council meeting tomorrow night. If you've been keeping up with the news, the Council will be considering an ordinance that would regulate police-based reality shows like Cops in our town. Those programs quite often seem to unduly target poor neighborhoods of color, as they say, as well as the mentally ill, and portray them in a stereotypical light, which is not really valid. And so this ordinance would restrict that in a few ways. It would not ban these shows from recording in our town, but there'd be some parameters around it, including they'd not be allowed to put anyone on film without permission. So it's important. Ben Stucker, the city council president, contacted me and asked if he could have my support and our support. And my guess is there's going to be a lot of folks there tomorrow night on both sides, so he's wanting some backup. So if you would come to the city council meeting tomorrow night at 6, that'd be fantastic on this important issue. And then Rochelle Strother, there's Rochelle back there, sent me an email this morning wanting you to know about a wonderful opportunity to actually have a free opportunity to hear Sister Helen Prejean, who's going to be at Gonzaga on March 14th in the Wolf Auditorium. That's in the business school from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. with a book signing and whatnot afterwards as well. She, of course, is the author of Dead Man Walking and is an advocate for abolishing the death penalty. All are welcome to attend, but Rochelle says it's probably great to RSVP, and there's a sign-up sheet in the back after the service. So if you're interested in that, see Rochelle. Oh, and for those who come on Saturday mornings for the yoga class, which has been meeting at 8, that's going to be moved to 9 a.m. Maybe you didn't even know about it. 8 a.m. is just a little too early to stretch ourselves. But 9 seems a bit better. So where's Jimmy? There's Jimmy right there. So Jimmy is a certified yoga teacher, and if you would be interested in learning more about that group or be participating in it, just see Jimmy after the service. Or show up at 9 a.m. next Saturday, right? Good. Okay, and then real quickly, and I apologize for taking a little more time than usual with announcements, but some of you may have noticed I wasn't here for the last 2 Sundays. Some of you may not have, I don't know. But for a part of that, I had the wonderful opportunity of going to St. George, Utah, where a couple of our members, Bill and Barbara Morkill, have a place to get away from the cold. And there's a great Unitarian Universalist fellowship there that asked me to come and do some workshops and have some meetings and brainstorm and then do a service. And it was just a wonderful experience. I was down there last year and met with their leadership, and in between, they've been trying to get official recognition from the Unitarian Universalist Association and asked for my help in part of that process. And so the day I arrived last week, they got notification that they had been given covenanting congregation status with the UUA, so they're official, and they were just elated. So congratulations to them, but more importantly, I just wanted to thank you. I know most of you know that I have a passion for helping to nurture and nourish the growth of Unitarian Universalism, especially some of the smaller fellowships that are around, because it's important that we have a voice in the rural parts of our community, in the highways and byways, as John Murray said years ago. And I know it's an important mission for you too, so I appreciate having a little time away to do some of that work. And the congregations I work with are equally as grateful to you, so I wanted to pass that on. So do take a few moments now, as always, to greet one another. Make some new friends today. If you're joining us for the first time, don't be shy. We're glad that you're here. All right, and as always, there'll be more opportunity to visit with one another during our social hour after the service, so I hope you'll stay around for that. For now, let's move forward by lighting our chalice, the symbol of our faith, the symbol of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion, of our community and our individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world and a beacon of hope to those in need, and may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it's been found.
The opening reflection was taken from a sermon which was delivered by Reverend Scott Prinster from the UU Church of Toledo on April 3, 2011. American Unitarian Universalism and Transylvanian Unitarianism still have a great deal to offer one another, even as our relationships are evolving. We have benefited so much from their long history and courage in the face of enormous adversity. They have looked to us for examples of how to modernize their movement as Romania struggles with the new opportunities and challenges of Western capitalism. The worldwide movement that is cultivated at this threshold, the edge between East and West, the edge between tradition and freedom, is not a church of simple answers and cheap solutions. I believe that it is, more than ever, a meeting place where we can find a sense of belonging to a great and tenacious religious family, where we may reap the rewards of a real and honest faith. May we be grateful for this opportunity to grow in authentic relationship with a world that still has so much wonder to offer. May it be so.
Our first in-service hymn this morning, I learned, was a favorite of not only older members but also brand new members. A woman came up to me right after the first service and said that this hymn, which is "This Is My Song," is the reason that she became a member of our congregation. So please stand to sing 159, "This Is My Song."
My
Time for our story for all ages. So anybody who would like to come up to the front and join us are welcome to do so. Hey, the gang's all here. All right, so I'm going to get a couple of friends because, you know, I like to tell stories with friends, right? While you guys are still coming up. Okay, I've got two friends today. We're going to go sit down. Check, 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 check. Test, can you hear me? Yeah? Can you hear us? Mic check, mic check. Mic check, mic check. All right, very good. So most of you know my friend Purple, of course, our friend Purple. And Purple, looks like today you've brought somebody to join us. Who's this?
This is my best friend, Eddie.
Well, hello, Eddie. How are you?
I'm okay.
You're okay?
Yeah, we're not talking to each other. We're mad.
Well, you're mad. What are you mad about?
He believes that 1 equals 3.
And he believes that 1 equals 1. Okay, well, that's kind of a strange thing to be mad at each other over, isn't it? Math notwithstanding. I think that as friends, maybe you could get along even though you disagree about whether 1 equals 1 or 1 equals 3, right?
Yeah, the thing is, when we play checkers, he gets 3 turns and I only get 1.
That's because you believe that 1 equals 1, and I believe that 1 equals 3. Okay, well, that does seem to be a bit of a problem.
Yeah. And when we play tag, I have to catch him 3 times before he's it.
Well, that doesn't seem very fair. Well, you should just think that 1 equals 3, like me.
And when he divided our jelly beans, he got a lot more than I did.
Okay, well, this kind of reminds me of a true story that happened about 450 years ago in a kingdom far away, when a wonderful queen named Isabella gave birth to a prince that she named John. The queen knew that John was going to grow up to be king, and she wanted him to be a kind and wise king. So she taught him, above all else, people should be free to express their own ideas as long as they didn't hurt anyone else. When King John grew up, it just so happened that just like the two of you, there were a group of people that some believed 1 equals 1, and some believed that 1 equals 3. And they couldn't get along with each other. So after hearing everybody fight and argue, constantly bickering and not getting along, King John decided to pass a law. We call it the Edict of Torda.
The Edict of Tortoise?
No, not the Edict of Tortoise, the Edict of Torda. It was a rule, a law that said that everybody was free to believe what they wanted and say what they wanted, and nobody could pick on them for it.
Well, that sounds good. So I guess maybe I can accept that you think 1 equals 3.
Yeah, and I can accept that you think that 1 equals 1. But does that mean I don't have to get my jelly bean stack? Well, no, because the other part of the rule is you can't do anything to harm others, including treating them, using your beliefs as an excuse to treat them unfairly. Okay, when we get home, I'll give you back your jelly beans.
Okay, and I'll play tag and get you 3 times anyway.
Okay, that sounds good. Now you guys have worked it out. If only the rest of us could do the same.
This morning, we have a special collection. If you open your order of service, you will find a small envelope which you may use for your contribution. Do not worry about licking it shut, as we reuse these envelopes. This morning's special collection is in support of our partner congregation in Felsoracos, Romania, and is specifically meant to provide the funds necessary for bringing the new minister to Spokane in June 2019 on the occasion of the General Assembly. The UUCS partner church team upholds and promotes the Unitarian Universalist traditions of freedom, reason, tolerance, and love by interacting with our partner congregation. Our mission is to foster a relationship through support, communication, and education. We now gratefully give and receive this morning's offering, which sustains this community and its mission to the larger world.
Thank you, Michelina. We're now going to kindle our candles of care for those who are most on our hearts and minds this morning, and want to begin with a candle for Nancy Hand, who is recovering from surgery she had last week, and also a candle for Abby Roos and the Roos family. Abby's mother is going to begin chemotherapy this week for brain cancer, and ask for our thoughts as well. Let's take a moment of silence on behalf of others you might be thinking of, and as always, you're welcome to name them aloud at this time if you'd like. Those named aloud and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering in our world at this hour, we hold in our community with compassion.
The very essence of Unitarianism is religious tolerance, and a consistently firm attitude in support of liberty of conscience. Francis David constantly emphasized that religion must be free, that in question of faith there is no place for compulsion, weapons, or violence, because faith is a gift of God. In other words, Unitarianism is inseparably bound up with freedom of conscience and faith. There is no greater mindlessness and absurdity than to force conscience and their spirit with external power when only their Creator has authority over them.
In lieu of our meditation and reading today, we are going to see a brief video that was uploaded just for us by Reverend Palco, the new minister in Felshiracos, where our partner church is. This begins with some aerial footage of the village itself for those who'd like to see what it looks like there. It's quite beautiful. And then he's going to give us a greeting. Kind of hard to hear. It was done on Skype, but I think he gets the message across. So.
But there's still something to do with it. The congregation is very happy. As you see on our Facebook page, there are joint works and there will still be a lot of time until everything is in place. I hope to have a chance to meet personally, to get to know each other and to make new friends and plans are looking forward. I would like to thank the supporters for helping the college student and thanking the participants for dinner to support the congregation. We are very grateful for all support, every good word, every intention. We are rating everyone to Felshiracos. God bless you.
I would just like to note that today's service music is all about Transylvanian Unitarian villages. And you will be hearing 3 Hungarian folk songs, short ones, by Bela Bartok. He's the one that arranged them. I was in Transylvania in 2015. It was wonderful to go there. And we did see Bartok's home church in Budapest. And that was wonderful to be there for a service. So without further ado, 3 Hungarian folk songs.
In a village
Actually, those songs were about unrequited love.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Deb. Egyptian is Hungarian, as best as I can say it anyway, for God is one, and has been the defining statement of Unitarians in that part of the world since the 16th century. But it is as much a rallying cry for freedom, equality, and justice as it is a theological statement. To understand why this is so and its relevance today, and why we should care that 450 years ago Unitarians sought to protect religious freedom for all, we need to recall our Transylvanian roots. Many historians actually date the official origins of Unitarianism to this period, when theologian Michael Servetus was burned at the stake in Geneva for denouncing Trinitarian doctrine, and Hungarian King John Sigismund passed the Edict of Torda in Transylvania, the first law protecting religious liberty in human history. I do personally like to go back farther to the first century Christians who were both Unitarian and Universalist in their theology. As Jews, like Jesus, the early Christians believed Egyptian, that God is one, a belief that lasted well into the 4th century until Roman Emperor Constantine convened the Council of Nicaea to establish the Nicene Creed, which officially equated Jesus with God, or made Jesus and God the same. Prior to this, Christianity's first systematic theologian, furthermore, Origen of Alexandria, born in the 2nd century, rejected the existence of eternal damnation, making him a Universalist. But after Rome Hellenized Christianity, wresting it away from traditional Jewish thinking, these original ideas became outlawed and weren't heard again for more than 1,000 years. When Unitarianism resurfaced, it was again in Eastern Europe during the 16th century, resulting in the formal establishment of the Unitarian Church. So wherever we begin our story, whether 2,000 years ago or 500 years ago, all that happened in and around Transylvania in the mid to late 1500s is vital to its telling. Transylvania was the part of the Hungarian kingdom closest to the Ottoman Empire, which, though small, about a third the size of Maine, was thus of strategic interest to the Sultan. It was also comprised of 3 main ethnic groups: the Settlers, the Magyars, and the Saxons, as well as others that were deemed tolerated nations. Though most cared little or interacted much with each other in the struggle to maintain their own cultural identities. Some were considered nobility and didn't even have to pay any taxes, while others were looked down upon as serfs and peasants and had no political rights or power. The area wasn't converted to Christianity until 1000 CE, and even then became home to almost immediately to Catholics, Lutherans, and Calvinists, all engaging in power struggles for dominance. Given its location, the region remained influenced by Judaism and Islam as well. And placed at that crossroads between the Ottomans to the southeast and Europe to the west, also made it the epicenter where the two worlds often collided during the Crusades. After the fall of Rome, Transylvania became the gateway through which Eastern invaders like the Goths, the Huns, the Turks, and others entered Europe. When the Turkish army defeated the Hungarians in 1526, a civil war broke out over two would-be kings, Ferdinand of Austria and John Zapolyi of Transylvania. Although Zapolyi was driven into exile and nearly defeated by Ferdinand, the Sultan, fearing the West's influence over an Austrian king, a Western European ruler, came to his rescue by driving his opponent into Vienna in 1528. And upon taking his throne, King Zapolyi married Princess Isabella. Princess Isabella, the daughter of Sigismund I the Old, King of Poland. Hardly a year later, however, he became fatally ill and died just 2 weeks after his son had been born, John Sigismund, who was immediately crowned King of Hungary, though his mother, as queen, was obviously leader in charge with the help of some of her trusted advisors. Ferdinand, who ended the civil war only after being promised that he would get the throne in case of Zapolyi's untimely death, tried to invade, but was again driven back by the Sultan's army. Isabella then wisely moved her infant son to the capital of Transylvania, the part of Hungary again closest to the Ottomans, and Transylvania declared its independence shortly thereafter, naming Isabella its queen and little John its king. All of this was going on during the Reformation. And because the Catholics weren't as powerful in this part of the world, weren't as powerful in Eastern Europe as they were in Western Europe, it became the battleground for reformers, first for Lutherans and then later for Calvinists, who rival the Catholics for dominance. In response, in 1557, Queen Isabella and her now 17-year-old son issued a decree calling for religious tolerance, stating in part that each person maintain whatever religious faith he wishes with old or new rituals, while we at the same time leave it to their judgment to do as they please in the matter of faith, just so long, however, as they bring no harm to bear upon anyone at all. Do what you want, believe what you want, as long as you harm no one. Pretty good values. As historian David Bombau writes, in view of religious intolerance of dissent displayed throughout Europe at the time, this edict is a remarkable document designed to protect minority opinions and to keep the peace. The Hungarian king, whose reign was mostly restricted to Transylvania, inherited his good mother's appreciation for peace, and thus for religious tolerance, and grew up to disdain the constant fighting and unrest caused by religious rivals in his own kingdom. He was 19 when Queen Isabella died. In the meantime, another Hungarian, Francis David, or Ferenc David, as we sometimes say, born in Kolosovar in 1510, who had been the rector of a Catholic school and a priest, then joined the Reformation and became bishop of Hungary's Lutheran schools, and still later resigned to become a Calvinist, remained unsettled and eventually began preaching against the Trinity and even of Christ's divinity. As king seeking to keep the peace among such religious disagreement, especially between the Lutherans, the Calvinists, and the anti-Trinitarians, Sigismund assembled the Diet of Torda in 1563. By the way, Sonny and Bob Cook brought a picture. Just pick it up and turn it towards the group. I know you won't be able to see it, but it'll be up here in the front. It's a famous depiction of this event. showing Ferenc David stealing the limelight there. So thank you, Sonny. But feel free to come up after the service and get a closer look at it. He assembled the Diet of Torda to hear the differences, to allow everyone to express their differences and try to find a solution, a way to resolve their differences. What he ended up doing was quite wisely dividing the Lutherans and the Calvinists into two different groups and giving them their own systems of governance, so they didn't have to fight each other for power. Yet Sigismund mostly agreed with Francis David, his anti-Trinitarian arguments, and ended up appointing him as bishop of Transylvania's Reformed churches and as his own official court preacher, making King Sigismund a Unitarian. 5 years later, in early 1568, when Sigismund was 28 years old, after another debate between the Calvinists and the anti-Trinitarians, the king issued the famous Edict of Torda, declaring religious tolerance, the right of each church to choose its own minister, and that nobody shall be removed, harmed, or punished for their religious beliefs. Inasmuch as we know that faith is a gift from God, the edict says, and that conscience cannot be forced, if one cannot comply with these conditions, let him leave the country. Since we demand in our domains, there will be freedom of conscience. So in addition to establishing the first religious tolerance law in human history and making Unitarianism an officially recognized religion in the world, Sigismund refused to live in a country where people fight over religion. By almost any standard, Bombal says, certainly by the standards of his time, King John Sigismund was a remarkable ruler. Following the policy of his mother, he made toleration the hallmark of his reign. When he identified himself as a Unitarian and found the majority of the nation supporting him, he only demanded of those who disagreed that they live in peace with those with whom they differed. On January 14th, 1571, at age 31, he officially recognized Lutheranism, Calvinism, Catholicism, and Unitarianism as the country's received religions, in addition to others that were legally tolerated religions. The next day, unfortunately, he was severely injured in a carriage accident and died just a few weeks later. Compounding the tragedy, his desire to establish a land of unprecedented religious tolerance was doomed with his demise. For upon his death, the Sultan appointed a Catholic in his place, King Stephen Bathory, who immediately dismissed Sigismund's mostly Unitarian court, including Francis David. Although those protected under the previous Edict of Torda remained so, the new king forbade the establishment of new religions or any innovations to those already established. He particularly disdained the Unitarians, many of whom he had punished and whose works he had censored. He also forbade them from holding synods anywhere outside of the capital, refused to let the Unitarian bishop even visit his churches, and placed them all under the jurisdiction of a Calvinist bishop. As Francis David began preaching that the Eucharist is only symbolic, that infant baptism should be abolished, and that praying to Christ is no better than praying to Mary, he was arrested on charges of innovation. The Calvinists and Jesuits actually called for the death penalty, though he ended up being condemned to life in prison, which for him was the same as death, for he fell ill and died in his dungeon cell within the year. When the king's Catholic cousin, Sigismund Bathory, took the throne in 1597, he began prosecuting Protestants outright, especially Unitarian Protestants, seizing their property and forcing them to convert or die. In retaliation for a failed Unitarian revolt in the first years of the 1600s, the Unitarian Church in the nation's capital was taken away and given to the Catholics. And only Catholic services were allowed to be held in any of the cities that were considered disloyal to the new king. When the Calvinists took over just a few years later in 1605, the Edict of Tolerance was again respected, but given that the Unitarian Synod was now presided over by a Calvinist bishop, 62 of its churches were converted for Calvinist usage. And a new creed was established requiring Unitarians to worship Christ, to baptize infants, and to observe the Lord's Supper. The decree had the effect of limiting the freedom of belief of the Unitarian Church, Bombal says, but securing the continued existence of the Unitarian Church in Transylvania well into the 20th century. But it has been tough there for Unitarians ever since. Their churches and rights were disregarded for generations. And in 1728, there was even a failed attempt to outlaw Unitarianism altogether. As Bombal succinctly explains, the government created a fund for the conversion of Unitarian children, decreed that no non-Unitarian might marry a Unitarian, prohibited any public discussion of Unitarianism, forbade conversion to Unitarianism, closed Unitarian schools, and refused to permit any new churches to be built or any existing churches to be repaired. Since then, again well into the 20th century, and today, Unitarians as ethnic Hungarians have been under the rule of various foreign powers and have experienced brutality, ethnic cleansing, and the denial of their right to express their own culture or often to even speak their own language. Even today, the brilliant high school students in Felshorokos that so many of you sponsor in the Unitarian village we partner with there are at risk of flunking their state high school exams each year because Hungarian is their native language, the language of their land, and yet the tests are given in Romanian. Romania being the country that has claimed the region since the end of World War II. So perhaps in light of this brief history of a land and a people divided for more than 1,000 years by differing religions, powers, and cultures, as well as being caught in the middle of Islamic and Christian conflicts, disputes between the East and the West, and later between Germany and the Allied forces during World War II, and between the Soviet Union and the U.S. in the Cold War, you can understand why the idea of tolerance, if only a dream, remains so vital, and why the Hungarian cry that has historically united so many, Egyasisten, God is one, is again far more than a theological position. It is a cry for freedom, for self-determination, and solidarity amongst a people who have seldom known such glories. Thus, a few weeks ago, on January 13th, when Unitarians all over that region assembled in Kolesvar, Romania, the birthplace of Francis David, to celebrate the 450th anniversary of the Edict of Torda, it was an ecumenical event that took place in a Catholic church on the main square and included Lutheran and Catholic speakers as well as Unitarians. Indeed, dozens of religious leaders from all three traditions were successful in petitioning the Hungarian, Romanian, and European Parliament to issue resolutions declaring January 13th the official Memorial Day for religious freedom. During the celebration, Zsolt Nemeth, a Hungarian economist and politician who served as the Secretary of State until 2014, said Transylvania 450 years ago was the world's leading edge with the creation of freedom of religion, adding that today it is necessary to rethink this lost practice of tolerance. Another speaker, Zoltan Bolag, a Calvinist pastor and politician, told the crowds that Christian cultural ecumenism is also needed for Catholics, Orthodox, and Protestants. Laszlo Kover, who became the acting Hungarian president in 2012, said the occasion should serve as a reminder that we should live and implement our national identity and aspirations not against each other, not at the expense of each other, not in the spirit of national exclusivity, but reinforcing each other in the spirit of national fairness, adding that continued abuses against Transylvanian Hungarians seems contradictory to this goal. This is why Hunor Kelemen, current president of the Democratic Union of Hungarians in Romania, also reminded the crowd, the celebration and commemoration is not only about the past, but also about the hope of the present and hence the future. Other speakers likewise told attendees that celebrating the 450th anniversary as the birthplace of religious tolerance would be meaningless if, as a people, they could not do more to live up to it today. Perhaps most telling are a couple of Facebook posts in response to an article about the celebration. One entry simply quotes a verse from the Bible. Go therefore, make disciples of all the peoples, baptize them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Ghost. An obvious Trinitarian slight to the Unitarian idea of Egyagisten. Yet another replied, as long as the Hungarians are not equal in their own country, there is not and there will be equality for none. Today, Unitarians all over the world, including here in the U.S., are proud to claim ours as the very first religion committed to promoting religious freedom for everyone and to living in peace with those with whom we differ. It is far ahead of our time, as we may have been 4.5 centuries ago. Our world still knows little of such tolerance. So today, rather than merely celebrating this historic effort, we must use this occasion, as they've done in our faith's motherland, to recommit to truly creating such a land and such a world. And just as the Edict of Torda emerged from a part of the world that was divided on many fronts, between the East and the West, between the right and the left, the nobles and the serfs, the Catholics and the Protestants, our commitment must be to more than just religious freedom, but to freedom itself, to the freedom to express many ideas, and the freedom to participate in the benefits of society as equals, and the freedom for all to enjoy all that life has to offer. In today's world, where ethnic cleansing still goes on, and millions of refugees, the most our world has ever seen, must flee their own countries to escape poverty, racism, and war, it's easy to forget that our own country is as divided today as it ever has been. And we all feel the daily pressures and anxieties of being caught in a battle for the mind, in a war of words, in which people on all sides of the issues are fighting to control the narrative, fighting to restrict speech through ridicule, condemnation, political correctness, and by owning and buying and controlling the flow of information, the national media. We feel dread, as do so many other Americans, even as we try to reassure ourselves that things can't really be that bad here, writes Stephen Levitsky in How Democracies Die. Thank you, John, for recommending that book. Yet we worry. American politicians now treat their rivals as enemies, intimidate the free press, and threaten to reject the results of elections. They try to weaken the institutional buffers of our democracy, including the courts, intelligence services, and ethics offices. American states, which were once praised by the great jurist Louis Brandeis as laboratories of democracy, are in danger of becoming laboratories of authoritarianism, as those in power rewrite electoral rules, redraw constituencies, and even rescind voting rights to ensure that they do not lose. Democracy, Levinsky says, is based upon, guess what? Mutual tolerance. A crucial principle that is implied, but not written in our Constitution, and did not long survive its codification in the Edict of Torda 450 years ago either. Yet without such tolerance, he says, our constitutional checks and balances will not operate as we expect them to. So today, like our Unitarian forebears so long ago, we find ourselves at a crossroads, caught between the pool of opposing forces on all sides. Like Queen Isabella and King Sigismund and Bishop David, we feel weary and beaten down by the endless bickering and fighting for dominance, and long for a world in which everyone is free to think and say whatever they want so long as they don't hurt anyone else. And that's really what ideological intolerance is all about, isn't it? Controlling the narrative so no one is free to tell us that what we're doing is harmful. No one is free to say that we're wrong, that we're harming others and harming our planet. Whether it involves the suppression of religious, political, or scientific ideas, the righteous indignation that justifies such intolerance is but an attempt to maintain the status quo, to keep things the way they are, to prevent innovation, as the authorities put it in Sigismund's time. So as we consider the significance of the Edict of Torda, ahead of its time as it was, we should remember that Unitarianism isn't and never has been about what happened in the past, but about what we're doing today. In the spirit of Torda, to make our world more tolerant now and in the future. For it turns out, tolerance can't be written into law, into a constitution or an edict, yet it is the heart of democracy and equality and justice, and that is why, as the heirs of Torda, Unitarians everywhere must continue promoting and seeking tolerance so that in 450 years from now, the world can look back and truly have something to celebrate. Így ja Isten.
Well, our final hymn is actually a favorite of mine. I usually don't, it's very rare when I choose a hymn because I like it. I choose it for all sorts of other reasons, and Todd and I talk about it, and then we go from there. But when I mentioned it, Todd said, go ahead. which I appreciated. And he said, and tell them why you're doing it. So I'm going to tell you why. The hymn is called The Morning Hangs a Signal. It's number 40 in the hardback hymnal. And I first started coming to a Unitarian church, visited this one that used to be over on 8th Avenue when I was 18. I came with some friends, they were Unitarian friends. I was going to a Lutheran college at that point in time, and I was feeling kind of like I needed to poke my elbows out because I was feeling too straitjacketed with the beliefs I was finding there. So it was very exciting for me to be at a Unitarian church and to start hearing some of these things that Todd was talking about today. When I graduated from the university, I came eventually back to Spokane and started going to that church. And this hymn stuck in my mind because it kind of embodied how I felt about it, which was that this church is like a beacon to me, the beacon of truth, pieces of truth that it was able to show me. So it was very, very important. So I'm asking you to sing it with me today. It's called The Morning Hangs a Signal, and if you would please rise as you're willing and able, we will march through it.
These words are an excerpt from an old Unitarian prayer. May we light this chalice to endorse our present, for our commitment to truth and freedom, without which right relationships are impossible, for our commitment to character and honor, without which our dignity is a sham. Let us light this chalice to symbolize our future, for a brighter future for every person on earth, for a sustaining faith that carries us through even the darkest of times. We need not think alike to love alike. Amen, blessed be, salam alaikum, and shalom. To have the choir singing in person.